Something has cracked in our Jewish consciousness. And this has been most felt since October 7th. Author and political commentator Dan Senor, on his podcast, Call Me Back, recently read a letter from Zoe, a young religious Jew who lives in Melbourne. If you know anything about Australia, you know that there has been a whopping 400% increase in anti-Semitic acts since October 7th. Far more than the appalling 10,000 acts of anti-Semitism in the U.S. since Hamas's horrific attack on Israel. Zoe writes, I increasingly feel that our community won't endure. To me, the natural response is to make Aliyah and build my future in Israel. But isn't it my obligation to fight for my diaspora community? If you ask the thousands of French Jews who have made Aliyah since October 7th, they would say no. You cannot walk through the streets of Paris wearing a kippah and not worry about being beaten up. For that matter, you cannot walk through many American college campuses wearing a Magen David and feel safe. You cannot protest in Boulder, Colorado without risking your life, or gather in front of the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., and feel like your life is not in danger. And these are only a few of the worries in the diaspora. Say nothing of the worries of Jews in Israel, of parents of hostages, of families of soldiers still in Gaza fighting after 2 years. It isn't safe for Jews there, and it isn't safe for Jews here. We cannot help but ask, what does the future look like for Jews in America and for Jews around the world? That very question inspired Dan Senor's State of the Jewish People address, delivered at the 92nd Street Y. His talk titled simply and urgently, The Future of American Jewry After October 7th. And it didn't just reflect our unease, it challenged us. It challenged us to imagine a path forward, asking how might we move forward with purpose and with clarity. He began by naming an unsettling truth. Despite our strength, our visibility, our prominence, anti-Semitism is intensifying. And our defense of Israel, while vital, isn't swaying public opinion. He then asked a painful and honest question. If we can't win the information war, if we can't make the anti-Semites less anti-Semitic, if even our universalism won't buy us a get out of the pogrom-free card, then what are we to do? His answer was profoundly simple. We must lead Jewish lives. That is what sustained the Jewish people for centuries, in every moment, in every age, in every place. That is the answer. Now, it's not a glamorous answer. It's not a provocative answer, but it is a quietly, radically powerful answer. We must lead Jewish lives. Not culturally Jewish lives, not occasional Jewish lives, but authentic, real, meaningful Jewish lives. Because this is what has sustained our people in every generation, living while rooted in what we can control, our values, our learning, our mitzvot, our communities. And that brings me to a story that has held my heart. Hirsch Goldberg Polin, Zichrono Livracha, one of the 6 Israeli hostages murdered in cold blood by Hamas after more than 240 days in captivity. But during that time, he became a source of strength for his fellow captives. Or Levi, who had also been kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival, and whose wife Einav was killed by a grenade thrown into the shelter where she hid, shared, after 491 days in captivity upon his release, the moment with Hirsch that helped him survive. He told Hirsch's parents, I remember Hirsch saying, "He who has a why can bear any how." He who has a why can bear any how. It's a paraphrase of Viktor Frankl, the Auschwitz survivor and psychotherapist, who taught those who have a why can can bear with almost any how. For Orr, that why was his 2-year-old son who had already lost his mother and wasn't going to lose his father. That why saved him. For Agam Berger, that why was her faith. Rescued after 482 days in Hamas's hell, her mother Meirav said they took her body, but they could not take her soul and identity. In captivity, when her captors brought her a stack of items recovered from an abandoned Israeli military outpost, one of those items was a siddur. And just days before, Agam dreamt of a siddur, and then it arrived. How do you explain that? That's not chance. With that siddur, shares Agam, I began marking Jewish time. I figured out when it was Shabbat, when it was Yom Kippur, and I fasted. On Pesach, I refused bread. I asked for corn flour, and they brought it to me. In a strange way, they respected my religion. Such a powerful statement. We aren't going to change the behaviors of the anti-Semites. We aren't going to convince them of anything they don't want to believe. It isn't about them. It is about us. If we have the why, we have the how. So I ask you, what is your why? Why live a Jewish life meaningfully and with purpose? Some 4,000 years ago, our ancestor Avraham heard a call. Lech lecha ma'artzecha mimoledetcha umibeit avicha. Go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I will show you. It is the first command spoken to Avraham, and it was the first step in the Jewish story, a story that continues today with each one of us. This Lech Lecha, our challenge for the coming year, is our challenge for the moment. On this Yom Kippur day, when we are asked to determine the nature of our next steps and how we will be written in the book of life, we must also ask, what are we prepared to contribute to the covenant we inherited from Avraham and Sarah? What is your why for being Jewish? Is it the belief that Judaism is a living, breathing moral mission that you are responsible to carry forward, to model for your children and grandchildren, your coworkers and friends? Thank you, Michael. Is it the healing rhythm of Jewish time that holds you through the chaos of the week? I feel sometimes with Michael that I'm in a Baptist church, and you're responding amen to me, so thank you. Is it the way Jewish tradition calls you to care for the vulnerable, for your neighbor, for the earth? Is it the fierce hope that even after all that we have endured, we are still, as a people, able to live with joy? What is your why for staying rooted in this covenantal tradition of 4,000 years in a culture that urges us all the time to just let it go. Abraham could have said no. He could have said no to leave the comfort of everything that he had, to make a break from the past and accept the responsibility for creating a nation. But he didn't. Instead, he found his why. According to one midrash, he was walking when it came upon a palace in flames. What he saw was a world of beauty and brokenness. And he said, "Is no one responsible for this?" God answered, "I am the owner of this palace." But God didn't put out the fire. God appeared and waited. And Avram stepped forward, not just to believe, but to act. That's the shift that we are called to make. It is one thing to ask, "What is my why?" It is another to ask, "What is our why?" When we see our beloved synagogue, our community, our people, our world as a palace both beautiful and burning, we must ask not just where is God, but where are we? That's the moment that calls to us right now. In this moment of transition, when your spiritual leaders of 3 decades step down from their senior leadership roles and you embark on the beginning of a new journey, will you nourish the seeds that Abraham planted? Will you, in a moment of uncertainty, cultivate a community worthy of your children and grandchildren? Will you ask not, "What does the synagogue give me?" but "What kind of Jewish life am I helping to build?" In Senior's State of the Jewish People address, he offered a clear prescription for building a strong, purpose-driven Jewish future. He said Jewish summer camps, Israel trips, and day schools, all incredibly important experiences, ones that Rabbi Vogel and I have encouraged you to choose over and over again, because these are immersive experiences. They don't just teach Judaism, they embody it. They form identity through lived experiences, deep relationships, and joy. Now, did you notice what Dan Senior did not include in his prescription for Jewish life in the future? No mention of the synagogue. Why? My sense is that for most, synagogue life is not an immersive experience. Synagogues are places of occasional attendance, providers of programs and institutions. But that doesn't have to be. A synagogue can be immersive. It can be transformative. It can be the place where we find our why, but only if we make it so. And only if we choose to step into it not as consumers, but as covenantal partners. Only when we recognize that we individually are responsible for our collective why. Years ago, at the former Shomrei Torah, we created beautiful stained glass windows that rest in our rotunda. It began as a study of Genesis with artist Revital Goldreich, but it became a collective work of sacred art. Participants studied for a year and then spent 2 years forming the thousands of small pieces of the windows that reflected both the individual and collective interpretations of the participants. The project not only transformed the physical space of our home, but it shaped the participants' connection to Torah, to practice, and to communal responsibility. Each of the participants asked themselves, not what does the synagogue offer me, but what kind of Jewish life am I helping to build? One of those participants was Miriam Carroll, Zichrona Livracha. Miriam didn't just attend synagogue. She lived her Judaism here, week after week, learning, praying, leading. She understood the importance of being present in community and for community. Even in her final months as her body weakened, her spirit never did. She came in her wheelchair quietly, faithfully, to remain rooted in Jewish tradition and Jewish life, and in her sacred place, in our sacred place. I mention Miriam because she taught me something. She showed me something by her presence and her commitment to community. Seeing her push herself through her decline, it moved me. Would I do that? Would any of us do that? And because she did that, I saw that, and so many of you saw, that she imparted a powerful lesson. She reminded us that Judaism is immersive, demanding, communal, that Judaism calls us to embody core values, like the tshuva that is required of us today, like tochacha, the ability to provide honest and loving feedback to those who might cause us pain, to act with rachamim, compassion, and speak with hakarat hatov, gratitude. Judaism is about obligation, holidays, prayer, Shabbat, asking us to show up not only when it's convenient, but when we can be part of community. We don't wake up on Shabbat morning and ask, do I feel like going to shul today? Well, I do all the time. No, I don't. No, I don't. We go because it's our collective responsibility. Rashi, the medieval biblical commentator, teaches that when God called to Abraham, Lech Lecha, God was not asking for blind faith. Abraham was promised that if he followed the path, there would be rewards, fame, a great nation, and a blessing. But first came the risk, stepping into the unknown. This is the challenge before us today, to reimagine what HAMAKOM can be, to reimagine who you can be, to create a community that is not visited but lived in, to be an immersive Jew, not a nostalgic Jew, to build a community where our highest Jewish values are not spoken but experienced, where tshuva is not a concept but a process we live, where tochacha is not just a word but a practice rooted in kindness and compassion, where we feel personally responsible for one another's spiritual and emotional well-being. Our tradition teaches that there are many names for God. Some say 72. One of those names is Makom, the place. It is a strange and beautiful name for God. Not a being, not a voice, HAMAKOM, but a place. Our sages say God is the place of the world, but the world is not the place of God. In other words, God holds us, God surrounds us, and dwells within us if we let that happen. Hirsch Goodman of blessed memory brought God's presence to others, reminding them, he who has a why can bear any how. Viktor Frankl stated, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. And so I ask you, how in this world of increased anti-Semitism and hatred against the Jewish people can we make this synagogue, HAMAKOM, worthy of its name? How can we build something that holds each of us in sacredness? How can we invest it with so much compassion, so much gratitude, so much holiness that anyone who walks through its doors feels this is what it means to be home? How can HAMAKOM be a palace of peace and also a response to the fire? A place where your why is held and our why is shared. Because Judaism will survive. The question is not whether it will. It will. The question is, will it thrive here, in us, in you, in this HAMAKOM? May this be the year we stop visiting Judaism and start living it. May we choose courage, compassion, and covenant. May we find our why. May we build this sacred place together. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will, and may it be ours. Gemar Chatima Tova.
Yasher Koach.